the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth, the wisdom is sound, and the retic rundown. We're breaking new ground. From the jungle seat to the captive scene, we control the world if you know what I mean. With patterns so bold and sizes extreme, in the Retic Rundown, we're breaking new ground. Welcome to the Retic Rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth and let the wisdom resound. In the Retic Rundown, we're breaking new ground. Unlocking secrets of the serpentine kings, sharing knowledge, stories, everything it brings. From brainers to keepers, we pull the strings in the Retic Rundown. Hear the echo rings. Welcome to the Retic Rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth and let the wisdom resound. In the Retic Rundown, we're breaking new ground. Welcome, Retic lovers. Welcome, Retic lovers.
Man, I love that intro, dude.
You
It
too.
gets
I was
better every time.
like jamming.
Everybody is.
I'm legit like,
Nicole, when we had her on, same thing. She's like, that's my shit. I'm like, no.
well, what's up,
It's
everybody?
catchy.
Welcome to the
What's up,
Retic
everybody?
Rundown. It's Chris, Big Flexin'. You got Joe from Reach Out Reptiles, and you got Jennifer from Mod Exotics.
Hey
What's up,
guys.
guys? We got Mainlands versus Super Dwarfs today. So, I was reading.
All right.
I want to ask this question right off the rip, only because I want to know. I was reading something about like Mainland's intelligence is different from Super Dwarf's intelligence, or they're the same.
I, I don't think so. I keep mainlands. I've got a couple. I work with Karma at the shop. I work with, the super dwarfs. Obviously, I don't think the intelligence is any different. I think that it's more about like it's more. I think it's more small dog syndrome. That's what I think it is. You know how everybody's little yappy ankle biters wants to just get punt kicked across the freaking Kmart, right? Because they have no, because nobody, because like they don't. So I think that because they're smaller, I think people like kind of let them get away with a little more because you can kind of manhandle them and control them. Versus the mainland where it's kind of like, nah, you're not. I'm gonna do what you asked me to because you asked me to, not because I have to. And it's the same thing with big dogs. It's the same thing if you talk to any breeders. So I would say my stance is no. I think the intelligence is the same. I think it's in how the people treat them. But I'm curious to see what Jennifer's got to say.
I have to say I agree with you on this one, Joe. I haven't seen any major difference in intelligence between mainlands and super dwarfs. So just a little background information on myself as well. I do have a couple of mainlands in my collection. I did work at a private zoo for a while where we had about 200 reticulated pythons. Most of them were mainlands. So I've got kind of the counterbalance here with most of my collection being super dwarfs now. But having worked with that many mainlands and as many super dwarfs as I have, I don't think there's any difference in intelligence. They all respond pretty predictably, regardless of where they're from.
I agree. I think I don't know. What about you, Chris? Have you got both? Have you worked with both?
I have boas. I have two. I have two boas. I just feel like boas are meaner. You said boas, right?
No, I said, have you worked with both mainlands and super dwarfs?
Oh, I heard you say boas. I'm sorry. Yes,
No, I was like, man, all right, we're gonna go with boas. And
yeah, I have a mainland.
I was like, wait a minute, but all right.
I was like, yes, I have a mainland. I have the male mainland, the one I got from Jeremy from Brassman Reptiles.
Mhm.
But yeah, he pretty much says, like you said, he comes out and he's like, I'm gonna do what I want, but he's still gonna do whatever he wants to do. Like he tries to throw me around. He's still big, bro. He's like 10 feet.
And so again, I think like the best thing that I've found for working with them, I think is going to be learning. You got to have that. It's a different mentality when you work with an animal versus a human, and that's why dog trainers like to tell you it's really not the dog, it's the human, and you've got to teach them. And so, what up, James? And I think it's the same thing with, with the retics, right? This is where, I've taken in retics that have been considered like really nasty and hateful. That literally, Boca downstairs. I mean, I've talked about her before, right? And this is going to be one of those things. Like, as I've worked with her, she's gone through changes because she was conditioned one way, and her conditioning was for food only. And like I was as much a food source as I was giving the food to her, in her mind, right? And I've conditioned her now, and I've started working with her to change that mindset. That's the intelligence there. Um, and I don't, I think I've done the same thing. I've talked about I guess Gaston that I used to have when before I went to Korea. I think like you remember him, that big purple golden child I had
Yeah.
in Jennifer. That was, I mean, this dude. He was named Gaston for a reason, right? You ever watch Beauty and the Beast? Gaston's
Hmm.
big and he's muscly and he's a dick. And this thing had a head on him. Like I had to pull a picture up of him. It was massive. The amount of head muscles he had, and he was super jerk. But same thing. Once you start changing your mentality to work with them, not make them work for you,
Yeah.
right? And don't work against them, then that's when you start to see, like, okay, you come to an understanding. And I can tell you it, but then to explain it, that's where I refer so many people to Lori Tarini, and to Abby, because I think the two of them do a much better job of like explaining it past like the definition. Like you can't use the word to define a word. I'm like, I don't know how to break it down for you any farther than what I just did. They do a great job of it. So that's where, I look at them and I'm like, you want to see somebody pull the intelligence out of an animal? Those are two great examples that show it on a consistent basis.
Yeah, for sure. Any video that Abby posts, you can see her animals thinking, and the interactions between them. There's clearly some recognition and intelligence in the way that they interact with her, as opposed to if some random person went over and tried to pull one of her animals out, probably wouldn't have the same reaction. I think it's just that they recognize and they understand, that she doesn't mean them any harm, that she's the caregiver.
Oh yeah. And I can 100% attest to that because I definitely had to go over and like, help Jody out and stuff whenever Abby's been gone.
Mm,
And like, I definitely can tell the difference just in the way I know how they interact with Abby. I see how they also interact with Jody. And then, versus me. I mean, if you can look at it, pick up on it, that's where you start to see it.
yeah.
And I think you'll see that in the intelligence of any retic, super dwarf. You're gonna have to. The only other thing you kind of figure out is like, all right, what is that one's personality? Because just like every person has a little bit of their own, and the majority of them are nice. Every now and again, you get
So
some cantankerous ones like Joker in his heyday. He's that
you bring
dude.
up a really, really good point. And as I was thinking about, like, okay, how do we, compare super dwarfs and mainlands for this podcast? The thing that keeps coming back to my mind is they're all individuals. They are all individual animals. Yeah, there may be some generalities that we can make in super dwarf versus mainland, but I don't think the rules apply across the board, like, because they're just all different. So he's setting the stage for our conversation in that
Right.
way that, we got to keep in mind that they're all individuals.
Definitely.
So
So like, sorry, there's a bee around me. Uh, there's so my super doors, like my male, I feel like the males are more aggressive than females. That's why I always get females, but I don't know. I may be wrong.
Are they young?
Yeah, they're still young.
As they
But
get to be
my
adults, you're going to see some changes there.
but my female though, she's like super chill. Like I can pick her up and take her out, and she's just tame. Like she just sits. My male, on the other hand, just wants to run.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah. So what's the role of a male and a female in any other? The mother's the nurturer. They're usually easier. They get along. They're a little less prone to unless to be the violent one, generally. I mean, unless you're Boca downstairs, but that's not her fault. She's just hungry, right? But your males, on the other hand, are made to be bravado. This is why I think males generally have better color, better. They're the better looking ones. What?
Mm.
Go, go talk to any breeder and ask them what is the best looking snake that you've ever produced. 99% of them, it's gonna be male, right? The best looking one, the standout, and I and it's because that's the way it goes in nature. Like they are the colorful ones. Typically, they are the more patterning. And I don't, not that I think it has anything to do with that in snakes, like for their attraction or whatever. I think it's just the way it kind of laws of nature, right? But the other law of nature that before I got off on my tangent is that mothers are the nurturers, and therefore that's why you'll. I gotta put this pin down. I keep blowing the camera. Sorry. Um, but the mothers are the nurturers, so therefore that's why. And I agree with you. My females generally are all very, very easy in comparison. I take a different approach to my males because I'm a male and I have male pheromones. And males, especially in this time of year when they're smelling the other females, like I just had Nick the other night popped his face at me for the first time and I don't know how long. Like, he's 9 feet, he's big motley male, or he's not big. I mean, he's 9 feet of male, but like literally, and it caught me off guard because any other time I almost treat him like a girl because he's just so docile. And he turned around because I was tapping his tail and he come out all wide mouthed at me for the first time. It caught me off guard. I got complacent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm going to add one caveat to that. Adult
What's that?
breeder females, when they're trying to build, can get real nasty because they're just so hungry. My
I
girls
think that
right
is it.
now, while they're building, like they're the ones who are hitting the glass when I walk by, and I'm like, "Whoa, okay, like calm down." You never do that. You're usually my puppy dog, who I take out, and you're super chill. But like this time of the year, man, whew, they're testing me because they just are
Oh,
hungry
yeah.
and itchy and like don't touch me and just
Uncomfortable,
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I mean, I've never been
hormonal.
pregnant. I've
Yeah.
never been pregnant, but feel like Jen could give us a perspective on this. It's not the most comfortable thing.
No. I mean,
I
honestly,
will.
female cycles, even in retics, like we see kind of a similar thing where the hormones shift, they start to build follicles, the hormones change them and change their personality a little bit for that time being as they're building, and then they breed. They tend to be very submissive during that time and like just kind of chill. We're okay now. And then, once they're gravid, they get real irritated and want to move around a lot and just don't want to sit still. And then, they have their babies and they go back to being the chill snake that you came to know and love. And you're like, okay, well, thanks for coming back to. I'm sure you guys have plenty of comments about the like female cycle that you can't say, but I will say it because as females, we go through the same kinds of things as our hormones change, except for we
Yeah.
go through it every month rather than once a year.
You're like, I'm so jealous. Right. All right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about. All right. So mainland versus super dwarf clutch size, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mainlands, you're looking at 30. Let's say a small mainland clutch is 30. That's a pretty decent number for most mainlands, even a first time female.
Mm-hmm.
But versus like let's say 10 for a first time female super dwarf, right?
Even that could be
Then
a lot. I mean, your first
any
time Parampa female is probably not going to give you 10 eggs.
oh no. I mean, like we're gonna go with like something like, what's up, Ryan? What's up, Phil?
Yeah.
Something like, even like a super dwarf cross. Like I'm not talking pure Karumpas. Yeah, I'm expecting, I'm expecting like 5 eggs that are gonna be this big,
Right.
like they're gonna look like lychee eggs or something. It's gonna be ridiculous. But no, we'll do like super dwarf cross, right? 10 eggs. All right, from a market demand, right? Because you've seen both. From a market demand, do you agree that prices should be higher on super dwarfs like versus mainland. So kind of like for instance, right? You can get a mainland albino for 150 bucks, right?
Mhm.
200 bucks all day long. But your super dwarf albinos, like the cheapest I've put them at is I think 950 for a dwarf,
Mm.
right? For a dwarf male, 950 purple albino to purple albino, right? Like, do you think, what are your thoughts on, like, does that price, does that fall into like the overall category of like owning one versus the other,
I think it
where it
makes a
makes
lot of
sense?
sense. This is simple economics, supply and demand. We can't create as much supply for the super dwarfs as there is of mainland. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that they're a little bit more now. I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift in the market, that there are more people who are buying into super dwarfs and are seeing the value of having a smaller animal, and the less cost of maintenance as well. So that, what did you say, 150 versus 950 over time, the super dwarf's actually going to cost you a lot less. It's going to cost you more upfront, but the maintenance, the caging, all of it, the feeding, it's all going to be a lot less for a super dwarf. So, people are kind of catching on to that, and you're seeing a lot more super dwarf breeders in the market.
Oh,
So
for
we're
sure.
having more supply available. So I don't know if we'll ever get to a point where there's equilibrium, because there's more super dwarf breeders than mainland breeders. But we might see some of that kind of level out.
I think it'll level out, but I honestly think that for certain stuff, especially stuff that's been around a long time, and with the new tea pauses and stuff that are coming in with the mochino, the orange flow, right? Endo, mocha, it's all coming, right? Or it's here. That means that like your Clark strains are going to have to come down in price as well over time. I'm almost thinking though, as more super dwarf and dwarf breeders come in, and the demand or the supply is met for the demand, right? And that levels out, the prices come down. But I honestly think we might see an uptick in price on the mainland side, because for I don't think that as the super dwarf side catches on and everything, where you have a lot of people, like I know I hear it every freaking week, multiple times a week. I did not know these existed. Clint turned me on to them, right?
Yeah.
Um, Snake Discovery told me about you guys. I love retics, but I never could own one that would get 20 feet, right?
Right.
So now that's the whole reason. I think what's going to happen is that, with that, while the demand is going to go down for mainlands, then I think, it's going to push people out because, or cause people to breed less and less. But then they can also probably raise their prices a little bit too, because it's like, all right, no, like you want a mainland albino? I'm only doing 2 clutches this year. So you get, and it's a het to a visual. So let's say I do 2 clutches, there's 30 chances there. What, 30 chances? And that's all I'm offering. And, if I was a big mainland breeder, where I'm saying, hey, I'm going to do the right, this thing for the economy as well, to dial it back, I think they'll be able to I think it's going to meet a little bit,
That makes
I think
sense.
it has that possibility, or at least if they think about it, some of
Do
these
we,
Well,
mainland breeders could do that.
see,
do
you
we
say
think,
that, but here on Craigslist in San Antonio, there's a albino. What you're talking about, Mainland Retic for like 350 on Craigslist.
Yeah, you know why it's 350? Because somebody went to a pet shop and they paid a pet shop price versus a breeder price. And then they're probably going to give you their 120 gallon with it, right? That they paid $100 for,
they want their money
and they're wanting to get all their money back, right? And that's Craigslist. It's an individual. You're not like I do think you're always going to see stuff like that on Craigslist and stuff. But when you're talking about the breeders, I think that's the difference there for
I
sure.
wonder if the psychology of what you're talking about, though, is going to actually line up with what mainland breeders do. Uh, they'll just keep producing because, I don't know, because they can. I'm not sure what the, you know,
What,
psychology
what?
is there. I mean, when you're producing $100 snake, why make,
Okay. But you can attest to this is that because you've sold super dwarfs and sold super dwarfs that are worth several $1,000s
Mhm.
all day long. I can tell you for someone who does this on the daily, or if I did it part time as a hobby, I would rather sell one or 10 $1,000 snakes
Yes.
than to try and find one person that has 10 grand to spend on one snake, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're right. Like at the point of like, even if I can produce $100 snakes, but I can produce a clutch of 60 of them, that's 6 grand.
Right.
That's hard to turn away.
So they're going to
That
keep
when you
pumping
have
them out and keep
and they
that price
will,
down on
right.
mainland.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I think it would have to take a significant turn. It's a slow boat to turn, right? And I
Mhm.
think what'll happen with the mainland breeders is as the super dwarfs catch on more and more and more to where they're buying less mainlands, it'll take a little bit. There'll be an influx, there'll be an overflow. At which point, I mean, they still have their uses. They can get sold as feeders and stuff like that. I mean, we all know those kind of things that we don't really like to say it happen. Um, but we know it does. And I think there'll be a chunk where that happens, right? And then, but I think the shift will happen economically for them, not because they want to necessarily, but just because there'll be less of a demand for them.
Yeah, they have too many
And then
animals.
if they're
There's
smart,
no room.
then it'll be like, okay, well, let me market this correctly and say, okay, no, all right, you want that. I'm only offering it this way, two options. It's limited. And that's how they bring their market back up. But I
Yeah,
don't think they'll look at it that way.
yeah, it's going to be
I
a slow
I
shift, like
hope
you
they
said.
do.
I feel like Mainlands are
So
harder to sell though versus a super dwarf. But
no,
then at shows, I seen super doors go for like 175.
are you sure?
Yeah,
It was the super
harder.
dwarf.
Oh, no, not a super dwarf, but a dwarf.
I mean, and that's the other side of it. Maybe that it is. I don't know the lineage. I can't say. So I think that we've talked about that before, where it's worth what people will pay for it to an
Mhm.
extent is where you establish the market, right? But then I think some people just don't understand how to market themselves nor the animals, so therefore they'll just undercut, and that's why you see. That's why a price drop at 175, if I see it on a random table at Tinley, doesn't concern me, even though that undercuts any snake I have over in my booth. It doesn't concern me because A, it's either one sale and that person is looking for the deal and I hope they got what they wanted. Or they're gonna come where there's trust to that. And I
Yeah,
don't think that one super dwarf on a random table is always gonna be your best bet, you know?
I really think
If you're a new person, like that's probably not your best bet to go after.
no, absolutely. Reputation goes a long, long way with super dwarfs. If you're a breeder of super dwarfs, like people need to trust that your lineages are actually what you're saying they are. You see a $175, super dwarf on a table, I'm gonna be going, okay, who are the parents? Who produced the parents? What value does this animal have? And if you can't prove any of that, or you don't have the reputation to uphold it, I'm not buying, even though it's super cheap.
Right.
So that's a huge thing in the super dwarf breeding game.
And so what happens generally with that, right, is that somebody comes in because they've heard a little bit about it. They found this deal. Then they go to another breeder, such as me, Jennifer, Eric. I mean, and they're like, "Hey, I got this," and they're really excited. And then it sucks because then we crush their soul a little bit
Yeah.
and still have to try to. It's a beautiful snake. I
Right.
really hope. Just understand this is where it's at. What's up, Carissa? And I know I've had that conversation many a times with many people. I'm like, oh, like here's, and then they're like, the other side of it, then they want you to work for free for them, right? well, can you go find out all of that for me and tell me? And I'm like, absolutely not. Here's the questions you need to go ask. Learn it like I did. Like, absolutely not. I'm not chasing all that down. I used to. Whew, people will exhaust you with that.
Yeah, that's the energy vampires. They'll
Yeah,
suck you
exactly.
down.
Right. And that's where you just have to understand your worth and your time and what your time is worth to you.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah, I've done that though. Like I've helped them out. Like I'll message like Gary or if somebody has a
Oh,
question.
I'm not saying that we don't help people out. I'm saying that you have to regulate how many people you help and be
Yeah.
okay with that because it will suck you dry.
Oh yeah,
Right
definitely.
there, and when you're early into it, it's fun and it's exciting, and you're like talking all the time. And now I'm like, no, I'll talk to you, but I'm gonna talk to you on like, especially when it's my off time.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, nope. I'm like, guys, I have a family. I have the dog. I have my snakes I have to take care of. I can't sit here and type to you nonstop, right? And
Yeah.
then on the other side of it is it's like, but when I do have that time, I give it to him. It's undivided and everything else. Then on
Yeah.
the other side of it, we have like Dax, who is like on here the other day, and he's like, dude, I don't sleep. I answer everybody's questions, and he's the man for it. Like, and I love him for it. But even with that, I still know that that man regulates himself because, like, I asked him a question over the weekend, and he read it and got back to me on Monday. And when I wasn't, I get it. I was like, it is not a big time question, but I know he's the type that will answer anytime.
Yeah. I think we all
Oh,
individually need to establish our own boundaries and where that line exists because, I'm a professional and I have a family as well. So I can't be, doing the all night messaging with people. But at the same time, like somebody who maybe has a little bit more time and this is, everything to them, then go for it. You do it. Like that's amazing. I think that's great when people are able to just help at any odd hour. It depends on the individual and what
I
their
Oh yeah,
priorities
for sure.
I agree with you both, but from what I've learned, like doing podcasts and trying to like, come back hard on my podcast, and I got asked to do Mike's podcast, and then I'm starting another podcast. You know, so I got one coming out Saturday too. So I learned that
I,
I was in a relationship before this, like before I met that girl, and I'm gonna tell you what, I kind of regret not spending enough time with her, only because I was doing everything else. Like I was just worried about my podcast. Like I guess I didn't give her that time, that attention. I didn't focus on my family either. So
that's what I'm saying. It's
that's why
balance,
that
man.
relationship
You
split.
got to
So that
balance it.
relationship, yeah, you got to balance it. So that being said, I mean it's a lesson learned.
Oh yeah.
for sure.
And I was putting all my time into the podcast, devoting myself. I know it's not about Mainland or Doors, but that's what I'm saying. Like you gotta break away from everything and give time to your family. It's like what Joe was saying. Like, hey, I got a family. I help you out, but family comes first.
Yep. 100%.
So I get that. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good. All right, Jen, I got a question.
Okay.
So keeping both and working with mainlands, right, and the zoo, and then and everything, and personally, and then keeping the dwarfs and the super dwarfs, right? Let's say you got a dwarf that's 10 feet, right, and a mainland that's 10 feet. Do you think there's a difference there in handling?
That was one of
Where?
my questions.
I
What's my
do.
question now?
I
I
do.
want your thoughts.
I do. So I actually have a 12-foot pure super dwarf right now. She's massive. She's been fed very well her whole life. And she definitely handles 100% different than a 12-foot mainland. When you take her out, she is automatically trying to go up. She's using more of her muscles and is constantly trying to move. And it's not like the flightiness that we talk about sometimes with super dwarf. She's not trying to get away from me. She's just, I got to go up. I just need to move. I need to get up. And it's not the same gripping onto me that a mainland will do. A mainland, they're a little bit more fluid, I feel like. Confidence might be the word for it. They feel a little bit more confident in, their movements and where they're going, and a little bit more relaxed. The muscles aren't as like bound while you're handling them as, an adult super dwarf. So I do think that there's a major difference, even at the same size of animals.
So
Has your
what
experience
size
similar?
would you like feel like you need a second person around them? Whether it's dwarf, super dwarf, mainland.
Yeah, so anything over 10 feet, I'm not taking out without at least somebody home. I won't just handle an animal, even one that I know is a puppy dog, like super chill, great every time. I won't take her out unless I know somebody's home where I could shout and get help if I needed it. So I think the 10-foot mark is kind of my boundary. There aren't
Your
any
boundary.
animals. I mean, I have up to 14-foot retics in my house, and there aren't any of them that I'm like, I need a second set of hands, unless we're doing something like, I don't know, we've got a stuck tooth and I need somebody to like manhandle her to get that tooth off the lip. But otherwise, they're handleable at just about any size. Even the 18-foot mainlands that I've dealt with, I could do it myself, but I wouldn't do it without somebody within shouting distance.
Right, just being there.
Yeah.
So that's one of those that I get asked a lot too, and it's like, when I'm asking like, what size are you comfortable with as an adult? Somebody's like 6 feet, and I'm like, how big are you, bro? And he's like 6'7". I'm like, okay. I'm like, dude, 6 feet. I was like, let me show you what that looks like. I was like, here's my 11-year-old like holding a 6 foot. He's like,
In
what?
one hand, yeah.
Yeah, right. So that strength, that size, I think. But I will give you that. Like, and I think that definitely when you start talking about bigger snakes, especially this breeding type of season, I don't care whether it's mainland or super dwarf or dwarf. Guys, I definitely encourage you to take Jen's advice there. At least if you're down somewhere, like right now, it's just me, right? I'm not gonna do it. I take the same kind of role as you. Like I'm sitting here, like I'm not gonna go mess with Boca right now, because in the event that she grabs me up, like
Yep.
that's 11 feet and 35, 40 pounds. And it's like the problem is like, if she pins pins the arms, and you put like you're and she's big enough to pin the arms,
Yeah.
then you're done. It's not like she's intentionally trying, but I mean, it's just a safety measure. So yeah, it's like Tuesday nights, man. I mess with the little stuff and the racks and everything, just
I
because
mean,
of that. So
even my 10-foot girl, just the other day, I was helping her get a stuck shut off, and she did not like that I was trying to get the eye cap that was stuck on her face off. And she threw the back end of her body around my face. And I was like, hold up, we can't be doing that. Like you have to be really aware that even a 10-foot animal could do some damage. Like this is a pretty good sized female. She's thick.
well,
But,
and
so know when you can get help and, where somebody is. I had somebody at least in the house while that was happening. I could have shouted for if I needed to.
And the other side of it is, even with the smaller ones, you have to be smart about where you're letting them get around you.
Yes.
I mean, if those of us have been around for a while, remember that one that happened where that lady died, and that was not a big snake.
No, it was just
Like, but
she just
she just had it around her neck, and but it's only like an 8.5 foot snake. He's not big. So that's the other side of it, is you got to be smart, guys, whether it's mainland, but I think that's one of the other things that I
But
want
like I see
to
that
talk about with
comfortable.
the bigger ones, right? If when you're talking about I can move them by myself, a lot of times what we'll do is do the shoulder drape. Well, your carotid's right here, and I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but where they just decided to go like
squeeze
that
a little. Mm-hmm.
and squeeze a little, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm seeing stars, like, like you don't realize how quick that can happen.
And they could just make you pass
So
out like that.
right, so mainland or super dwarfs, guys, like that when it comes to safety, and you know me, I'm all about safety third. Don't Don't put it around your neck, all right?
You
Especially
must
when
have
you're
been in
home
the
by yourself.
military or something. Safety
Nah,
first.
not safety third. That's the way it
I would
goes.
say
I'm telling you.
for me, I would say 15 feet. I would need somebody else to handle them because I've handled a
You
13-foot
think?
myself.
Oh, it's not that I can't. It's about, but
Yeah, I know
like,
being safe,
you
but
know, it's like at what point, it's like along with that, at least I feel like, all right, if I'm going to give this advice, I should probably live this advice because everyone I'm giving that advice to, if I turn around, I leave this podcast and I go downstairs and y'all read my obituary in a week, and you just heard me say, listen, I'm not going to go do this. And I just did it. Like it literally discredits anything and everything that it's ever rolled out of my mouth. So, like, while I agree with you that I can do that with that 13-foot Sula we got, stuff like that, I just wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
well, like
I,
it's like
you
you.
know,
I know there's somebody here in the house, so if I pass out, I know somebody's gonna hear me because
Yeah,
my
that's the
room's
big
in the
key. It's
garage.
like have somebody around that can
There.
hear you. Like me, I don't have anybody right now, and my neighbors think I'm weird. So they ain't coming to help. All right.
On that point too, safety third, as we're on the topic, always make sure you have some tool if you needed to get them off of you. Like I keep the bottle of Listerine in my big girl room, so it's within reach if I needed it. Keep
hmm
alcohol nearby, keep hand sanitizer, something nearby so that you had at least something within reach while you're screaming and shouting for somebody to come help you.
Yeah. Because I mean, even that, like having those things within reach, even with the super dwarfs, a smaller one, like if you get one that latches on and does not want to let go,
Yep.
it's a lot of strength. And then when they start to want to twist and really like, then you start getting rips. Those
Ooh,
teeth are serrated. All right. That's
no,
when it
I don't
goes
want
from
to do
puncture wounds to cuts. All right. You don't want that.
so. I almost got bit once, and that's because I guess she thought it was like rat fur. I guess I don't know. She launched herself up straight at my face. Yeah, and I went, "Whoa!" I
Oh
So
was
man.
you
like,
haven't got bit yet at all
"No,
by anything?
not by my
Ever?
research. No, not by my
Oh,
research. No."
it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
She said,
I had a little super dwarf cow bite me today. Little butthead, man.
"It's cute
Those
though."
things are cool. They're translucent. You can see through them. Mostly. It's pretty weird.
And it's a baby.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty young. They're a couple months old. But I held it up to the light and it had a full rat in its belly.
That's cool.
It was very visible. Like I would say like it wasn't clear, but it was, like the frosted glass. Like look, it was wild. All right. Mm,
Hold up. I got a
So
question
all right, what you got?
because I know this happens often. Is like when somebody says, "Well, Mainland's 10 foot and that super dwarf is 10 foot, so what makes it a dwarf?" How do y'all answer that?
Locality. It's where
Yeah.
it came from that makes it a super dwarf. So mainlands are from just that, the mainland. The super dwarfs are from specific island localities where over time they've evolved to be smaller animals. So, I can tell you I have mainlands that are the same age as 50% super dwarfs, and they are the same size. So you cannot use size as a determining factor for if it's a mainland or a super dwarf. Happens all the time, though. People rehoming an animal that's 4 years old and has been maintenance fed, they're like, oh yeah, it's a super dwarf, even though it doesn't have a drop of that locality blood in it.
At
So
all.
that's one that comes up a lot, actually. I talked to quite a few people about that. Like, you can't just call it a super dwarf because it's small. You
Right.
have to have the lineages to prove it.
No, 100%. And that's the other side of it that I try to explain to people when they're like, oh, well, it's not going to take you that long to do a new recessive. And I'm like, well, no, it does take, because we have a fourth element here, that it's like, oh, you got to get the lineage right,
Mhm.
and hit those percentages. But super dwarf, those are we've talked about, everybody's talked about it. It's a marketing term.
Mhm.
Jen's 100% right. It boils down to locality versus that actual term. more than anything, right? And if I could think, or if I could do one change to the industry as a whole, um, is that we just release all the marketing terms and just start discussing locality and locality only. Because even from the mainland side, there's localities
There
that
are.
are awesome, right? And then there's other localities that are coming in that are going to be considered mainland that are but are more super dwarf size. Let's talk about Philippines, right? Like small locality, they're not super dwarf, right? They're not the seven localities, that fall into that. And that's something that was started long before. And unless, you're the industry leader that gets to determine to, I guess, make that addition or fight the industry leader to make that addition, somebody's got to step up for it if they want the terms to apply. And this is the funniest fight that I see happening all over these forums. I'm
Mhm.
like, so why not just eliminate the problem and let's just do locality percentages and that's it. And then based on that and completely lose the term super dwarf and dwarf. But problem is it's marketing. Marketing always works. It's why you have teacup chihuahuas. In reality, no, they're just runty fucking dogs that have health issues because people continue to line breed runty dogs. Right? It's not really that it's not designer, right? But what we can get, if we literally just as an industry decided to change it to locality only, I think then you're also gonna see things blow up because people are going to be less afraid to start mixing cool localities, right? And there's some out there, right? The Ternates, they're awesome. The Halmaheras, they're awesome. Rodney has proven that they do. Respite, we're working for Reach Out. I'm telling you, Rodney has proven that they do awesome with their phenotype, or not not phenotype, their polygenic traits into
Mhm.
certain morphs. He's not wrong. Right? Philippine, have you seen that? Like, I got the 50% boho Philippines that Murder Worm did, right? That I got that mail from. Those were absolutely amazing. Aztec in the Philippine side. I mean,
Oh yeah.
when you start looking at this, the Bali yellow heads that used to exist, right? Like those things, if we started like just instead of being so worried about 100% of meeting this marketing term and instead focusing on pretty retics.
So let me
I
ask
don't
you
know.
this, Joe. Then what happens to the undocumented localities? We know they came from one of those seven islands, but we don't know which one. So what would you call them then? If you're eliminating super dwarf, what happens to the old school super dwarfs?
That's a good question. I'm gonna write that down and I'm gonna give it some thought because I don't have an off the cuff answer for you. But that's a valid question. So,
What was
all
the
We
right.
have a
question?
lot of those these days. When we can't
No.
prove
I mean,
what locality
and
they came from, we call it just old school or
we
unknown
do.
super dwarf.
And it does have a tie to the marketing term. I hadn't given it any thought, but that's a great question. I'm not gonna give you an off the cuff answer. I want to give it some thought because I gave all that others obviously some thought before this, but I'm gonna write this down. So, question
We'll circle back to that on another day, Joe, because
on another day.
I
No,
agree
I'm
with
going
you
to
that
because now
the
you
super dwarf needs to
now
go
you've got
away.
this ticking, and I'm like, how do I solve this problem? How do
Exactly.
I?
How do we solve that
And I'm
problem? Because there's great lineages that we just
right.
don't have a documentation of which island they came from. And we don't want to lose
Oh
that.
yeah, right. So
I
if
see.
we
I see what y'all talking.
lose
I'm like, how do you go back
the
and find them?
We can't. The documentation doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it maybe never existed in the first place. It was all just hearsay. So, there is some.
well, it's like the first group that came in, they were just tiny retics. They and that's the history point of it. It was like the first 100 or so that came in, but they didn't come in. They said the islands around in and around Kalatoa, right? So like it is a mixed bag, but it's also where they figured out because there were pregnant, females that came in, and that's when they figured out that, oh man, there are small retics. These are adults. So then the next time that they were asked to go out, they wanted them from those locality islands and they wanted them separated and they requested that, right? So, but we still have that first group and they're beautiful. They're amazing. So,
Yeah.
but all right, I am gonna think about this one. 'Cause that's a
Problems
good
for Joe
question.
to solve.
I hadn't thought about it.
Hold on, sorry. There's a plane flying over here.
Oh, you're good.
Beautiful day in Texas. I'm glad you're getting to enjoy the weather. It's already dark here. You're not that much further west than me. How did this happen?
Oh man, it was a nice day in Pittsburgh too. I'm just gonna say it. It was great.
I like
I
Pittsburgh
wanted to
though.
be
I like being
outside.
out there.
I don't understand why Garrett won't let me work from like the park as long as I got a hot spot, but he says I'm just not productive. I don't know.
It's that
I
whole
like
return to
it's because
office.
that what it's the fall, man. I just want to be out with the colors, you know, like the
Yeah,
leaves are
love it.
changing. It's beautiful.
Oh, I
So,
forgot
all
it
right.
is out there.
While I'm
That's
writing
right. Y'all did
this,
that.
all right. Next question for the group. It'd be we definitely know about people that love to gatekeep in this community, especially with retics, right? Um, do you think that super dwarfs and dwarfs help to break that barrier down strictly because of their size, or do you think that do you see the same amount of gatekeeping happening, saying, "Oh no, even super dwarves and dwarfs shouldn't be owned by like everybody"? Which let me preface with the fact I don't think everybody should own like Ivy line 20-foot mainland retics. Not everybody should have that. But my pie downstairs is 10 foot, right? Not every mainland is huge. So in that gatekeeping theme, right? What do you think? Do you think that
I think there's a different kind of gatekeeping that happens in the super dwarf
Mhm.
community. Like,
ooh,
I
I'm
agree.
all ears.
Mainlands don't need to be owned by everybody, but I don't think you see super dwarf breeders gatekeeping to the same degree, because I
Hmm.
think most super dwarf breeders are of the mindset like this is a manageable animal for most people, as long as they understand the feed response and they understand the caging requirements. I don't think you see as much of the gatekeeping on who can own them, but I do think you see more gatekeeping on the locality stuff. Or people are like, oh, well, this particular locality, I'm only going to, sell to the choice individuals or whatever it may be. So I think you see a little bit more of that rather than, the average consumer not being able to purchase them.
Yeah,
There's
Mm,
also
I
a
can
level of
I can agree with
gatekeeping
that.
that happens from the price tag too. If you have pure
I do agree with
locality
you.
super dwarfs, not everybody can afford a $1,500 plus snake. There is that level of gatekeeping that happens too, but I don't think that's as intentional to keep people out of it. I think it's just, the supply and demand thing that we talked about at the beginning of the show.
Right.
See, like
Hey,
Phil here,
Phil's feeling it. He knows.
Got an Instagram.
he said has
Don't
changed.
worry. Don't worry. As much as I love Jake, he's so tall every time he looks down his nose at me. So
So it's funny you say that
I
because
love
we had a
I love
guest
it.
on.
I love going to mess with the Mainland guys and hang out with them, right? I just boost their ego, man. And then I go back with my little snakes. They're all great. I mean, I would say like Gavin Bowie, Jake, like Aubrey,
Solid.
Eric Lee, every one of them has been amazing with me, despite even, you know, any kind of audit, issues, whatever outside of it, like that didn't involve me directly. Like everybody is great with me. So the mainland guys, I love all y'all. We're just picking on y'all a little bit.
But okay, so it's funny you say that because I had a guest on my show, and she
Mhm.
said she got talked on a lot because her first snake was a mainland retic.
Nothing wrong with that.
I, the reality is people are gonna talk. It doesn't matter what you get.
It's true.
And she said that when she went to ask for help, that they were just like they didn't want to help her. They were rude. Like they were just gatekeeping information. So I don't know
I
who
mean,
she asked. But,
and I think that depends on who you talk to. I think you're gonna see that. I mean, and kind of goes back to that, like, you know, starting with that. If for the person that gets that $175 super dwarf, are they gonna, and they reach back out to that person because they remember, oh yeah, it's this, and they don't talk to them no more, and then they reach out to me and Jen and Eric and everybody and
Yep.
Dax and be like, oh well, what did I get? And so
Yeah.
I don't know what you got, man, but that's the other side of it. So like, and I think that's a lesson that people learn early, but
Mhm.
it usually only takes one. It's
Yep.
usually a fairly inexpensive snake. I have seen it happen where it has been expensive sometimes. But generally it's less expensive. And I tell people, I was like, regardless, I was like, even based on the person's reputation, the snake did nothing to you. The snake is beautiful and you love that snake all the way up until you're like, well, nobody likes who produced it, so now I don't like it. I was like, snake did nothing to you. Love the snake. I was like, maybe if you don't breed it, if that's your goal.
Hmm.
But I was like, even that being the reality is that most people they don't have the follow through for breeding, and they're gonna get some, and then they're gonna realize, oh man, when they're little, they're really easy to take care of because it's a square this big, and I change the paper, and then it's, oh no, it's an 8-foot cage the size of this table in front of me, and I'm like scooping piles of horse crap.
It takes a
Um,
lot longer, a lot
yeah,
more, elbow
a lot
grease
more
to clean
hours,
those
a lot
giant
more hours,
face
and
off.
then and that's when they'll like be like, all right, I'm gonna take it back down to one, and they're gonna usually keep that very first one because it's the love. And that's like, boom, cool. Who
So
cares?
true. I 1000%
But
agree with you, Joe. Uh, one of the questions I like to ask when somebody's going, "What is this snake?" is one, do you love it? And two, is this a pet or did you intend to breed it? Because
yeah,
that really dictates the way our conversation goes.
mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
mean, if it's a
100%.
pet, it's fantastic. Like there's nothing wrong with this animal. If you intend to breed it, now you need to be aware of what consequences you may face if you breed it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying you can't because it's not my place to keep who can breed and who can't.
Or even
But
with
just
your own
understand what the
animals when
market.
you're selling them, like when I ask that question, like, is it a pet or are you looking to breed? If they answer me like it's a pet, here's what I want. I want a male. I like this. It's got to be in this price range and this size. I'm like, cool. Here's 6 pictures. Tell me what you like. I don't
Yeah,
even give them prices. I don't tell them morphs. I don't tell them nothing, right? I'm like, tell me what's pretty because that's what they're picking off of is their heart. And
yeah,
that. And but if you're going to talk about breeding, all right, now I'm going to lay out percentage. And not, don't get me wrong, like once they pick it, I let them know what their percentages are. They get all that on a hatch card, whatever. But it's about knowing the difference and how, like, what are they looking for? And if they're looking for a pet, they're picking off their heartstrings. They're picking off what's pretty, and they want to know if you think that thing is nice.
yeah.
Yep.
Mainland, super dwarf, is
Doesn't
it
matter.
nice? You
Mhm.
know what the easiest way to do? Hey, let me, because this whatever platform they're talking to you on, I'm like, hey, what's your phone number? I'm like, I'll send you a video right now, and you can make your own assessment of seeing how that snake interacts right here on my hand, right? And then they're like, I don't get asked for 1,000 pictures. I gotta send them one video, and I answer their questions, but it's about like I don't talk to them about like, oh well, down the road you should read this. Then they start thinking about it all weird, everything else, right?
Uh-huh. It changes everything.
So it changes it. And that's, from the baby side of it, or whenever you're selling an animal, if somebody just wants it because it's pretty, don't oversell it.
Yep.
Don't sell yourself out of a sale because you will do it in a heartbeat.
I've done that a time or two.
No, not me too.
We
Me
all
So
too.
what? So what I was gonna
Mm.
say though, but like, wouldn't they be like, oh, that snake's only acting like that with you because you handle him? I always tell them like, retics are work though.
There's still work, and that's where you educate people. Whether mainland. Super dwarf, dwarf. This applies to across the board. I tell people like we talked about earlier is that it's a each one's got their own personality. I'm like, overall, here you're seeing how it interacts. Like, and I'm giving you an honest assessment. I'm like, but when it gets there, I was like, it's going to be in a whole new environment, a whole new cage. So if it's a little nippy, I'm like, here's the people you watch, here's the people you go talk to, um, because I know that, like I said, Lori Tarini's got great videos. Like I said, Abby, just watching, I learned something when I watch her Instagram reels, like in the way that she does it. Like
Hmm.
I'm like, and that's what I explain to people. I'm like, try to broaden your horizon a little bit. See stuff that what do you like about this person? What do you like about this person? What do you want to try? I was like, and then as you get more comfortable, then don't be afraid to try your own ideas, as long as it's within like a certain realm, like you can play with it. Like I keep my snakes a lot cooler than most people do.
I do too.
Me
But
too.
yeah, my basement's like 64 degrees. And then
Oh
they
no,
get a
mine
hot
is like
spot.
75.
They have their hot spot. Guess what? I don't have meal refusals anymore, except for known ones. Like, oh, that's cool. Do you see that? It bubbles up. Can
It's
we
not
all do
working
that?
for me.
It's not working for me either. How did they do that?
Just
I
a
don't know.
square.
Sorry, squirrel. Anyway,
No,
that one would be yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it doesn't
probably
work.
for Joe.
Oh,
Yeah, but here it
Oh,
is.
good
it works
morning.
for
What's
Joe.
going on?
Special sauce, I
He
guess.
has the iPhone. That's why.
I'm on my laptop. I'm on my MacBook. I don't
I'm
know.
on
Oh
my
Maybe.
wow.
Facebook too.
Yeah, it's still Apple, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, dang. Now I'm like, I lost my whole train of thought. Where was
So
I going with that?
one other comment I wanted to add on that though, like with the, seeing how it interacts with
Oh,
us
yeah,
in the
yeah. We were
video,
talking. Yeah.
there's one thing that Chris McVicker does that I think is amazing. When he's selling an animal, he'll oftentimes show you a picture of the parent on him. So you get scale of what the potential is for that baby instead of
Mhm.
just, the parents are 12 feet. Well, everybody's interpretation of 12 feet
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit different in the
Different. Yeah.
retic world. I noticed that,
I like that.
mainland breeders can be like, oh yeah, it's 12 feet when it's actually 8. And a super dwarf breeder, or I shouldn't even say breeder, a super dwarf keeper is going to say, oh, it's 10 feet when it's actually 12 feet. So there tends to be a little bit of a like shift in mentality of how big this actually is if you're thinking that you want a big snake or if you're thinking you want a small snake. That
Right.
aside, when you're, having these interactions with people and they're about to buy an animal, showing that potential parent size, in addition to, seeing how the baby interacts, I think is going to give them a better picture of what they can expect going forward.
100%. I like
I
that.
love that he does that.
I wrote that down. Guess what I'm bringing up at next Monday morning meeting.
We need to get Garrett to hold all of the big
Yo,
There you go. We
Garrett's
we
short
have to
though, for
we have
scale.
to disclose that Garrett is only 5'4".
Garrett
really?
is
I thought he was like 5'11".
No, in reality, I think he's like 5'9".
He's about the same height as me, yeah. 5'8", 5'9".
About 5'9", 5'8", 5'9", somewhere in that arena.
How tall are you, Joe?
Like 5'11" on a good day. I used to be
Oh, yeah.
6 foot, but I jumped out of a lot of planes and I compressed my back a little bit, and so 30 jumps later, I shrunk an inch.
That's possible.
Tell me you're in the military without telling me you're in the military. I shrunk.
I shrunk. Yeah, it's possible, bro.
I was like,
It's
I'm
possible.
5'11" too. So
So, all right, cool. Well, hey, I think it was awesome. I think we had a great show. I had a lot of fun with it. Jen, tell everybody where they can find you. Do your own shameless plug and shout out.
Own shameless plug. So I am Mod Exotics on Instagram. I also have a Facebook for Mod Exotics. You're welcome to friend me on Facebook as well. Jennifer Jean. I do most of my posts actually through my personal page. I need to get better about doing them on my Facebook. But anyway, at Mod Exotics on Instagram, I'm very active on there. So if you want to see what we got going on, what clutches are upcoming, and the animals that I'm working with, check it out.
I'm gonna have to come get me a pet. on that side over there. No, the other side. Yeah, that side. That
Yeah,
side.
we got GTP eggs in the incubator right now too.
I know. I
So
know. I don't need any more pets. Like, oh, they're so expensive.
they're expensive. They're worth it though. They're beautiful.
I know. I know. I want one. I want one. And I told
What
Steven years ago that whenever he started with them, I was like, one day I'm getting one from you, dude. So it's coming. It's
That's gonna
coming.
happen.
I
So
feel like they're super sensitive though. I feel like those snakes.
huh?
They're a little bit more fickle with what they require. Like, so for an example, so this is kind of his and her snake room, right? So this is the GTPs are primarily his thing, and the retics are my thing. If I'm dealing with the GTPs, I'm washing my hands in between each one. We have separate feeding tongs for each animal. Where on the retic side, I'm going from one cage to the next and just taking care of everybody. And like, you know, it's lots of handling, lots more going on over here with the interaction side.
Is
On
there
this
really
side,
like a divider behind you that we don't see because you're just perfect? Just be like,
no,
there's a
It just
glass wall here. I can see Steven being like, keep your unsterile ass over here.
So fun story, the teenager turned 18 and moved out of the house. So he's going to take over the teenager's room and make it the chondro room. And then I get the rest of this room. I'm so excited.
Sweet.
That's awesome.
Look,
Hell yeah.
nice.
Yeah,
That's always fun.
pretty
You know
stoked.
why? Because retic people are like, I've got space and I need to fill it.
Exactly. I already have plans for some 8 foots and some more 4 foots. Yep. Hands are up here. We're going to fill it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, awesome guys. Well, I've got to get rolling because I've got snakes I got to go feed. They're hungry. They're down there smelling
All right, guys.
food.
I appreciate everybody
It was
hopping on.
awesome.
Watching.
Thanks to everybody
Thank
for
you,
jumping
guys.
on.
Thanks for
Thank you,
having me.
Jen.
Super
As
fun.
always.
Thank you,
Yeah, it was a blast. I enjoyed it. All right, we'll let the intro or the outro
Outro.
go.
all right.
Outro.
Here we go. Thanks, Jen.
Bye.
Welcome to the Retic Rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth, the wisdom is sound in the Retic Rundown. We're breaking new ground. From the jungle's deep to the captive scene, Retics rule the world if you know what I mean. With patterns so bold and sizes extreme, in the Retic Rundown, we're breaking new ground. Welcome to the Retic Rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth and let the wisdom resound. In the Retic Rundown, we're breaking new ground. Unlocking secrets of the Serpentine Kings, sharing knowledge, stories, everything it brings. From breeders to keepers, we pull the strings in the Retic Rundown. Hear the echoing rings. Welcome to the Retic Rundown, where the giants roam and the legends are found. Uncoil the truth and let the wisdom resound. In the Retic Rundown, we're breaking new ground. Welcome, Retic lovers. Welcome, Retic lovers.